I want to first sarcastically thank MLS for deciding to have two Sunday game and decided to have two Sunday game with a kickoff time of 6 hours between. On one hand, it's good the fact that, I get a bit of a gap between doing the first part of the review and then I can do the second part of the review once the final game is done. At the same time, why in the world is there a 6 hour gap? And that I bet a lot of people have forgot that there's actually one more game left tonight. Like everybody thought that the Minnesota versus Philly game was the last game of the match week. No, we still have one more coming up later tonight. And it must sucks for people in the East Coast that they want to catch most of the MLS action and that the last game of the MLS action for this match week is literally going to take place at 9:30, or not even 9:30, but 10:30 Eastern time in terms of the kickoff, and it doesn't end until 12:30. And if I was doing this in the East Coast, which thank God I'm not, I mean, if I would have done this in the East Coast, I probably would have moved the review to Monday. But if I had to do this, yeah, I would really hated it. But that being said, obviously, like I said, I'm going to do the first part of the review before the last game of the match week, and then I'm going to do the second part after the last game of the match week. And with that being said, let's take a look at the first couple of games. And, this match week, there were definitely a couple of very exciting games, and definitely there was some games that had some big headlines. Although the first game I'm going to be talking about between Vancouver and TFC was anything but that. I mean, this was a very dull game. And I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking everybody after this resort, not only Vancouver and TFC fans not going to be happy with the resort, but the neutral are probably not going to be happy with the way that this game has panned out because there was nothing that gone on. At least for the first 84 minutes or so, because in the first half, it was a slow, dull start by both teams. Both teams only combined like 6 shots in the first half and only like 1 shot on goal. It was a forgettable first half. And it was the same case in the second half too, where just nothing kind of gone on. And it got so boring that I kind of stopped paying attention to the game after the hour mark where there's just nothing going on. Like, unless, like, I still will put the game in the background, but unless I start seeing the commentators getting excited that there was some action, then I'll probably watch the game again. And that's when I got back to the 83rd minute when Vancouver, of course, won a penalty, and Montreal, of course, was able to put away that penalty to give Vancouver a 1-0 lead. And it looked like Vancouver was going to once again do a kind of smash and grab victory in this game. TFC had a response late in the game when De Leon scores from Delgado, and this was very unfortunate for Vancouver because when De Leon hits the shot, it actually deflected off of Ali Adnan, and that deflection just was enough for Maxime Crepeau to kind of caught off guard and caught a little bit flat-footed, and that, of course, was the equalizer for TFC, and that is actually the result of this game, which I don't think a lot of people was very surprised because I don't think anybody, after how dull this game is, I don't think anyone really deserved all 3 points in this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, while there was actually a lot of shots, there was 14-8. There was definitely more than what I thought that this dull game is. And if you look at the stats, it didn't feel like this was a very dull game. It felt like a normal kind of game where, both teams usually have around 14 shots or 8 shots in a game. When you look at that match, and really most of those shots came late in the game. Like the action really kind of kicked off after the 84th minute, which makes sense because, once somebody finally scores, that's when the game starts to open up a little bit. But Vancouver only had 1 shot on goal compared to 5 that TFC had, 7 shots off target compared to 8 that TFC had, 1 shot that was blocked compared to none that Vancouver has, and 55% possession compared to 45% possession that Vancouver has. And like I said, I don't think anybody is going to be happy with this game. For Vancouver, they'll be very unhappy because anytime when you concede a late goal, it felt like you just dropped all 3 points more than actually getting a point gain at home. And anytime when you drop points at home, that obviously is not very good. And as for TFC, the winless run continues, and they continues to tumble down the table. They're actually right now tied with Chicago in terms of the, or no, not tied with Chicago, but tied with Orlando City in terms of the points total. TFC currently are above that red line because I think they have a better goal differential, but they're currently tied with Orlando City right now. Or actually, the other reason why they tie with Orlando City right now and that TFC is just above the red line and Orlando City isn't, is because TFC had played one less game than Orlando City has. So things are definitely not looking good for them, and even when they had Pozuelo and Altidore back in this team, it felt like the same old TFC team and the team that has just gone on this winless run where they just cannot get anything going whatsoever. But moving on into the next game is Orlando. So I guess this is how it feels when you actually put away your chances, isn't it, Orlando City fans? I mean, this is why I said about Orlando City where if only this team could be like what they did to Montreal in this game, if only they can just put away their chances when they have, I mean, I'm not saying they need to put away every single chances, but at least if they're being lethal for most of their chances, at least they put most of those chances away, like in this game against Montreal, they would not be near the bottom half of the table. They would not be below the red line right now. This team would clearly be above the red line and even challenging in the top 3 or even the top 2 spot in the Eastern Conference right now if they can just be a little bit more clinical. And like I said, in this game that was the case, and especially in the first half too, because 27 minutes in the game, Nani scores on the penalty, which is a milestone goal for him because that's his 100th career goal. I swear, I thought he scored more than that amount of goal. I mean, this guy, he was very good when he was with Manchester United and scored tons of goals with them. But I thought he would have scored more than 100 by now. But he scored his 100th career goal. Certainly, congratulations to him. And then Akindele doubles that lead from Mueller and Higuita to make it 2-0 in favor of Orlando City. Then Will Johnson get into the act to make it 3-0 in favor of Orlando City, and then in the second half there was no score, and that of course is the final score of this game. As Orlando City, they had 10 shots in this game compared to 9 that Montreal has. So Orlando City, they didn't have a lot of shots in this game. They didn't really like just shoot from everywhere and really just kind of had some decent chances in this game. They had kind of fair amount of chances in this game. They had 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that Montreal has, so that's another key factor where, we have seen sometimes where Orlando City had like 20 shots and 9 shots on goal and they only score 1 goal. In this game, they're able to score 2 or 3 of the 5 shots that they have on goal. And in terms of shots off target, Montreal had 3 compared to 2 that Orlando City had. 5 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that Orlando City has. And Montreal has 52% possession compared to 48% possession that Orlando City has. So, yeah, for Orlando City, now the question is, can they keep this up? Can they at least, for the rest of the season, I know they're not going to always have these kind of performance, but at least kind of be a little bit consistent and not like the very next game. What I fear about Orlando City in the next game is that they're going to go back to the Orlando City team that just cannot finish and give up goals and being leaky on the defensive end. Hopefully that will not be the case. And as for Montreal, well, it feels like it has really finally took a toll in terms of them losing a star player. And I guess knowing that this week they just find out that Piatti is now once again out for 8 to 10 weeks, it must have kind of really took a big blow, not only to the team, but also kind of mentally. Like, Piatti is literally the heart and soul of this team. He's the leader of this team. And knowing the fact that this team just found out that he is going to be out for at least 2 months and they're not going to have their leader, it must have took some... The team kind of felt a little bit dejected coming into this game, and that maybe that is the reason why they kind of had a poor performance. But that being said, Montreal, they haven't looked good in these past couple of weeks, and as I mentioned, is this finally has took toll on Montreal where, they they tried to kind of tread water for the first couple of weeks and the first couple of months without Piatti, and they able to successfully do that. But when is the point where they can just no longer tread water and that they will start to sink in terms of their season and also sink down in the Eastern Conference table? But one team that is definitely not sinking and instead rising right now in the Eastern Conference is Atlanta, who is now rise all the way up to second place, and they're only 1 point behind DC United with 2 games in hand. So technically, Atlanta right now is the best team in the Eastern Conference. And after all that worry about what happened to Atlanta in the first couple of weeks, all of a sudden they are back, and they look like a team that should definitely belong in terms of the crown and in terms of the top spot of the Eastern Conference. And in this game, they took care of business against the Chicago Fire. The Fire, they did have a couple of chances to score early on, but like the old cliche, if you don't take your opportunity against a big team, you are going to be paid. And Joseph Martinez was the player that basically made Chicago pay for not taking their chances, because he scores from Pity Martinez and Escobar. I think this is the first time that the two Martinez has been able to combine in terms of assisting and scoring a goal. I mean, this connection between Joseph Martinez and Pity Martinez, we all thought that this was going to be like the Miguel Almiron and Joseph Martinez kind of connection, but it kind of hasn't really worked that out so far. But at least Pity Martinez, the good news for him is he got on the assist chart again. I think that's his 3rd or 2nd assist of this season. And Joseph Martinez, of course, scoring another goal. He would then score another one from Pereira to make it 2-0 in favor of Atlanta. And Joseph Martinez, he is started to kind of heat up a little bit after kind of a slow start. And in many ways, Joseph Martinez, in terms of the way that he started this season, kind of is summarize what Atlanta start to this season has been. They got off to a bit of a slow start, but once they started to kind of warm up, yeah, they are definitely started to rise up in the Eastern Conference and looking to be like the team to beat in the Eastern Conference again. And that, of course, would end up to be your final score, as there was no score in the second half. And in terms of the shots in this game, both teams had 10 shots in this game, but Atlanta had 8 shots on goal compared to 3 that Chicago has, 5 shots off target compared to 2 that was off target for Atlanta, and Atlanta had no shots that was blocked compared to 2 that Chicago has. And Chicago has 53% possession compared to 47% possession that Atlanta had. And after this game, Dax McCarty, he actually had some very strong words in terms of this Fire team, and I'm actually going to read his quote right here as I'm going to pull it up on my phone here. So this is what he said after the game. "We need to have honest conversation with ourselves. It's not been good enough. The entire season not been good enough. So if guys can't figure what they want and if they don't want to be here, then maybe we need to have honest conversation with ourselves because it's not good enough from the team." And I guess the strong kind of words comes from the part where he says if guys can't figure out what they want and if they don't want to be here, then maybe we need to have an honest conversation. And him saying that in some way kind of throw the some of the player under the bus. Like, he's saying that if some of those players are not be there, then yeah, they should definitely not be there. And I guess if other team, depend on how other teammate will view this. If other teammate view this as a way when he says this quote and said that, hey, it seemed like he's saying that I'm not good enough with this team and he's just throwing me under the bus, then I should not really be friends with this guy. Not really on the pitch. I shouldn't even be kind of passing the ball to him. And that's when it creates a problem in the locker room. And I hope that is not the case for Chicago, and if that is the case, then yeah, this team is definitely in serious trouble right now. But it seems like that, in some way, there are something that I do agree with what Dax McCarty said there, where he said that this team need to have a hard look of themselves. Yes, indeed, they do. I mean, this season, I've been saying that they've been very inconsistent. They definitely have time look like they're one of the best team in the league, but then there time where they look like the worst team in the league. So I think what he is saying is that there's got to be time where they got to say to themselves, why can't we do this on a daily basis. Why can we have one game where we look like the best team in the Eastern Conference, and then the very next one they just look like one of the worst team in the Eastern Conference, and that they need to regroup after the Gold Cup? Now, that kind of strong words wasn't really the only hot headline coming out of this game. Veljko Paunovic also said after this game that he felt like Chicago should have deserved something out of this game because they were the more dominant side. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you're the more dominant side because you have the same shots in this game, then maybe that is true. But in many ways, yeah, I don't know what was he thinking saying that he was the dominant team. Like, how in the world did he think that, yes, Chicago, they had chances in this game to score, but so did Atlanta. And when you look at the stats and also throughout the game, the stats show that Atlanta had more shots on goal than what Chicago has. And in many ways, if those shots on goal that Atlanta would have put away, this would have been even a more uglier score than what it is right now. So what Veljko Paunovic says, I guess in some way it's him kind of hiding the fact that he's trying not to take fault of that and try not to kind of throw his team and blame his team for the poor performance. But at the same time, don't make it so obvious, and that I don't even think Caleb Porter would even try to do that. Like, Caleb Porter, I bet he's probably watching this and he's probably thinking, if you need some lesson in terms of trying to not blame your team and try not to blame to yourself of the fact that you had a poor performance, then you should call me up, because what you just said in the press conference makes it so obvious that you are clearly just trying to not put the blame on yourself and not put the blame on your players, even though it's clear that they should have been blamed for the fact that they were clearly not good enough for this game between them and Atlanta. But that being said, moving on into the next game is the Redbulls. So, when you look at this scoreline and it says the Redbulls absolutely destroyed RSL 4-0, and that this kind of reminds you of what happened with RSL against DC earlier this season when RSL got absolutely destroyed by DC 5-0, and it was one of the worst performances I've ever seen a road team done. In some way, that was not the case, and in some way, when you look at throughout this game, you would say that maybe RSL had a chance to maybe score the opening goal, because in the first half both teams had some decent chances, and it was the same case in the second half too. RSL really kind of had some chances of potentially get that first goal, and like it has been throughout the season with RSL, whenever they go on the road, where they seem to have those moments where they look decent and that they could have potentially got that goal to reward of the fact that they look good so far on the road. But again, as this season has gone, this has not been the case with RSL. Every time they look like they could potentially get the goal and look very decent, they basically weren't able to capitalize that. And once the Redbulls scored that first goal, and the Redbulls actually didn't even score this goal, it was actually an own goal by Silva that actually was first deflected off of Herrera, and then it deflected off of Silva that basically hits it into his own net to give the Redbulls a 1-0 lead. RSL just flat out kind of quit and capitulate. I mean, the floodgates really open after this goal. 90 seconds later, after the own goal, Royer scores from Kaku and Davis to make it 2-0. Then Morelos scores to make it 3-0 in favor of the Redbulls. Omer Fernandez scores his second goal of the season from Ivan and Morelos to make it 4-0 in favor of the Redbulls. And yeah, I mean, it was like, for RSL, if you don't look at what happened after the 58th minute, you would think that it was relatively a good game. But unfortunately, in soccer, this is a 90-minute game, and that if you only showed up for, let's say 58 minutes, yeah, it's definitely not going to get you over the line, and especially if you don't score goals, doing that good kind of spell that you had throughout the first 58 minutes of this game. So, for the Redbulls, it's a good win for them. And in terms of the shots in this game, 19 shots compared to 10 that RSL had. Most of those shots for the Redbulls came during this game, and A lot of them also came after when they scored that first goal. 9 shots on goal compared to 3 that RSL had. 7 shots off target compared to 5 that RSL had. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that RSL had. And the Redbulls had 63% possession compared to 37% possession. So for the Redbulls, it's another good win for them. They take care of business against RSL. And I believe right now, if I look on the standings very quickly right now, I believe they are now all the way up to, let me just check real quick. I believe they're all the way up to 4th right now in the Eastern Conference. Yep, they're up to 4th right now in the Eastern Conference with 24 points. So they're not that far back. They actually play the same amount game as Atlanta has. And by the way, Atlanta, remember what I said that they were in 2nd in the standings? They're actually now in 3rd place because I just remember that the Union actually won today and that the Union now officially have overtaken DC in terms of the top standing in the Eastern Conference. But of course, I'll get to that in part 2 of how they were able to do it against Minnesota. But that being said, moving on into the next game is Columbus and NYCFC. And one thing that I didn't mention about this game is that this was actually the farewell game for Zach Steffen, and that after this game, Zach Steffen has officially gone to Man City, and that, you know, remember how in the beginning of the season where Columbus had this deal with Man City where, Zach Steffen was going to go to Man City in the July, not the July transfer window, but somewhere around the summer month. Well, it has finally come where Zach Steffen is about to leave, and that this of course was his final game, and unfortunately in this final game he didn't really got a clean sheet, and he didn't, I wouldn't say he played very well in this final game. I mean, this season for Zach Steffen, he's definitely not he hasn't been as lethal as he has been in these previous couple of years, and has definitely have not been as good as he was last year, which kind of makes me very concerned as a U.S. men's national team fan. But in the first half, Zardes scores on a penalty to make it 1-0 in favor of Columbus. And by the way, this was a very back and forth game between Columbus and NYCFC. In the second half, Aber scores from Morales and Tajuri Shradi to make it 1-1. But then 4 minutes later, Santos scores from David Accam. So David Accam, for the first time this season in a Columbus Crew jersey, is able to get on the board and get on the assist chart. And then Castellano scores from Rain, and I wrote goal of the week ? Because this was an incredible goal. I mean, the way that he struck that from outside the box and from about 25 yards out, yeah, that definitely will get looks in terms of goal of the week. And the fact that when I look on the MLS article and when I look at their recap and saying the moment of the match, I was shocked the fact that they didn't even mention Castellanos' goal. Like, that was an incredible goal. Like, you gotta give him credit in terms of what he did in terms of giving this NYCFC team the equalizer. I mean, NYCFC heading into, before this Castellano goal, they were heading to an embarrassing loss. Like, this was a Columbus team that have not won a game in a very long time, and knowing NYCFC also NYCFC haven't lost a game in a very long time, this would definitely not be the game that they want to break that streak. And fortunately for them, and certainly thanks to Castellano, that did not happen, and NYCFC got a draw out of this game against Columbus, which I think that's their 8th draw of this season, and that it also shows that why they are kind of the draw kings of MLS right now. But in terms of shots in this game, just to show you how even this game played out, both teams had 13 shots in this game. Both teams had 4 shots on goal. 7 shots off target compared to 4 that NYCFC had. 2 shots that was blocked compared to 5 that NYCFC had. 62% possession that NYCFC had compared to 37% possession that Columbus had. So for Columbus, I guess they'll be happy the fact that they finally end that kind of losing kind of run, but they're still winless in a long time right now. And for NYCFC, yeah, these are kind of the game that I feel like they definitely should have won, and that these, especially against a struggling Columbus team, you would think that they should be able to get all 3 points. But having said that, at least they got a point on the road, which, whenever you get a point on the road, away, it's a good result, but I just have a feeling that some NYCFC fan, and certainly in an NYCFC perspective, against a team that hasn't won or got a point in a long time, you should be able to get all 3 points in this one. But that being said, moving on into the final game on this board is the Quakes. So they drew 1-1 against DC, and coming into this game, I was really concerned about how the Quakes would fare against DC United, because DC at this point, they were in the top of the Eastern Conference, and although they have definitely shown some vulnerability in these last couple of games, knowing that we do not have Espinoza, we did not have Tommy Thompson, and then coming into the game, we didn't have Eriksson because he suffered an injury. We were very depleted in terms of both on the attacking end and also in some sense the defensive end. But yet, that was not the case. In fact, in the first half, the Quakes absolutely dominated the first half. Like, I have never seen a half that the Quakes just completely took it on a team on the road and just absolutely obliterated the opponent's half. And we just had wave after wave after wave of pressure on DC. And, as we were approaching 10 minutes left, despite the fact that we have wave after wave of attack, and despite the fact that I was kind of shocked the fact that how we were playing so well, even though we're missing some of our best attacking pieces, I was worried we're not going to get that goal, and that after all this kind of wave of attack, it's not going to resort to anything. But thankfully, that wasn't the case, because Wando, he cannot stop scoring right now. He scored another one from Lima that makes him now score 151 goal in MLS, and now score 7 goals in the last 3 games. I mean, you talk about guys that is just in form right now. I think it's safe to say that Wando is probably the most informed striker right now. And to think that Wando, after what has happened in the first 12 games, and after many people, including myself, say that I thought he was done and that he's going to have to be demoted into the super sub role, once he came back into the starting 11, and once he scored that 4 goals against Chicago, he has really turned back the clock and turned back to 2012, where he just scored every single game. Like, this is just incredible, the fact that he's able to go from 0 goals in the first 12 games to now scoring 7 goals in the last 3 games, and now at the top of the scoring chart for the Quakes. But heading into halftime, we were up 1-0 in this game. And, although I was happy the fact that the pressure that we had in the first half, at least we were able to be rewarded with a goal, I just had a feeling that maybe we should have got a couple more. And there was a couple of decent chances that we could have maybe put away in that first half that could have maybe gave us another goal or two. And that I was worried that maybe in the second half, when DC is going to really start to fight back, and that's when the pushback is going to happen. And boy, did it happen for DC. And boy, my biggest fear of the fact that the Quakes wasn't able to kill this game off kind of come true. DC, they really started to fight back in the second half. And in many ways, this game was really a tale of 2 halves. The first half, the Quakes absolutely dominated. The second half, DC, they dominated, but they weren't dominating as what the Quakes was doing, but they still really put up a fight, and Vega makes some really big saves, and probably the biggest one that he made was when Marino basically hits an absolute rocket off a volley from about 25 yards out, and I have no idea how in the world De Vega was able to parry that one out. I mean, I know some people will say, well, it just hit straight toward him, but when you look at how much power that Marino generate from that volley, yeah, it's very easy for goalkeeper to just kind of palm it away, but they don't, because the shot was so powerful, the goalkeeper couldn't quite parry it away, and it just ends up into the back of the net. And there was just too much power generated for a keeper to save it. But that wasn't the case. Vega come up big in that situation, and I definitely couldn't believe the fact that he actually saved that. But unfortunately, that's when I also had another moment of, I cannot believe how he did not save that from Daniel Vega. Because in the 67th minute, Acosta scores to tie the game up for DC. And this was really a soft goal to concede. And in many ways, really reminds me of last season when Tarbell was in goal, where, it was a weak shot from, I believe, Jara. I thought Vega was going to either just pair that one out to go for a corner or just easily catch that one. But instead, he didn't pair it out enough to go out for a corner, and instead just pair it out right into the path of Lucho Acosta. And knowing Acosta, and he is one of the most dangerous kind of attackers and one of the guys that just does not miss a lot of those one-on-one opportunities, yeah, he easily slots that one home to make it 1-1. And my nightmare about the fact that we didn't kill the game off and we didn't finish those chances in the first half when we could have had in that first half kind of come true, and that this is what happened when we only score one goal and that we let DC kind of back into the game. But then after that, the game really started to turn ugly, and that it felt like the referee just lost control of the game. I mean, players was really clashing with each other, and that there was just numerous time wasting going on. There was players faking injuries just to waste some time. There was guys kind of diving, and it was really ugly. And I think in that stoppage time, where there was like 7 minutes of stoppage time, I think 90% of that stoppage time was just for players either just faking injury or guys are just kind of coming together, and the game just got really heated. And I mean, in some way, if you're a neutral, this is something that you love to see, and you love the fight and the tenacity that both team has, and that both team are really going at each other. But at the same time, if it just disrupt the rhythm of the flow. And usually I get really nervous about the Quakes at the end of the game when they're either holding on to a draw or holding on to a win. In this game, I didn't feel any of that nervousness, and it's all because of how ugly the game got and how it just kind of become kind of like stop and go kind of flow of a game where why not just end this game in a draw? Like, nobody really deserved to win at this point. If the flow of this game is just, couple of guys just kind of dribble and then a sliding challenge to stop the game, or just guys just kind of flopping around on the ground after there was an attack that it was going, it was just ugly. I mean, I think the referee, he knew that, I better blow my whistle because this game is going to really got out of the hand. And he finally blew the whistle in the 10th minute of stoppage time. And we walk out of DC with a 1-1 draw. And in terms of the shots in this game, we had 21 shots compared to 15 that DC had. Although most of those shots came in the first half. I believe we had 17 shots in the first half. We had some TFC kind of number of shots in the first half in this game against DC. We have 7 shots on goal compared to 5 that DC had, 7 shots off target for both teams, and 7 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that DC had. Possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession. So, in some way, I think if you would have asked me that us missing a couple of our key pieces on the attack and also on the defense end, and that we can walk out of here with a draw, I would absolutely take it. But in some way, I kind of feel a little bit disappointed the fact that, we did let in this game and we had chances of scoring a couple of goals to kill this game off, and then we concede a very soft goal to basically drop points in this game. I mean, if this goal that Acosta scored was a wonder goal, then there's really nothing I can kind of complain. And I'm not going to blame Vega for the reason why we dropped points in this game. I mean, Vega, he came up with some big save before this that, sometime as a goalkeeper, you're going to have one of those moments that it's a bad moment, and that, sometimes you get the blame of that. I really don't believe in that stuff. I think Vega comes up big in this game, and he really saved us a couple of times of conceding early on. But that being said, could we got more in this game? Could we got all 3 points in this game? Absolutely, especially how the first half has gone. But overall, I think since this is a game of tale of two halves, I think a point for both teams is only fair. And for DC, their struggle continues in these last couple of games, and I think they're going to be frustrated the fact that, they drop points again at home. And home, it shouldn't be a place that they should be dropping points. And knowing how their road form started to look very similar to last season, they cannot afford to drop many points on at home and expect to continue to be right near the top of the Eastern Conference or even in the playoff conversation. I have no clue how in the world that this DC team, after all this bad run has gone, is still near the top of the Eastern Conference. And in some way, that just also shows you how much of a struggle and how much of a dumpster fire right now that Eastern Conference has been this season. But that being said, I am now going to wait till the last game of this match week to finish, which is going to be at nighttime. And yeah, I am going to go watch that game and then also switch the boards for the last 6 game that I'm going to be reviewing later tonight. Alrighty, so the Galaxy versus Revs games just finished a couple of minutes ago, but I'm actually going to talk about that game last and first talk about Colorado winning again against FC Cincinnati in this one. They won 3-1 against FC Cincinnati. And, you know, unlike the previous couple of resort where I'm pretty sure whenever Colorado gets a resort or get a win, it really surprised everyone. I don't think this one really surprised anyone. I mean, I kind of knew that coming into this game with Colorado being red hot lately and that they're playing against an FC Cincinnati team that is literally the worst team in MLS right now and probably in the worst form of any MLS team right now. And Colorado, of course, take advantage of that and getting the 3-1 win. And they got their goal scoring started late in the first half when Shinyashiki scored from Nicholson and Bassett. And how about this Andre Shinyashiki kid? I mean, he is on fire in this unbeaten run, scoring 2 goals and also assisting 1 during this 4-game unbeaten run that Colorado has had. But in the second half, FC Cincinnati did get the equalizer, and it was actually the substitute, Kakuta Mane, scoring from Lamar to tie the game up. And if you're a Rapids fan, that has to be a very infuriating goal to concede, considering the fact that the team looked very comfortable and looked like they were going to cruise to get all 3 points in this game. And if you're an FC Cincinnati fan, maybe there's a small hope that this team can actually get out of Colorado with a point or even all 3 points. Unfortunately, that maybe feeling did not last long because literally less than a minute later, Mosqueda retake the lead for Colorado from Rubio to give Colorado the lead back. And then Rubio himself scoring from Price on a corner to make it 3-1. And that is the final score of this game, as now Colorado have extended their unbeaten run to 4 games and are now just 7 back off the playoff red line. In terms of shots in this game, Colorado had 12 shots compared to 11 that FC Cincinnati has. 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati had. 6 shots off target compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati had. And in terms of block shots, Colorado had none compared to 3 that FC Cincinnati has. FC Cincinnati had 60% possession compared to 40% possession. And I'll tell you what, I don't think FC Cincinnati had that much of a possession all season long. I think that is the most possession that FC Cincinnati has had throughout this season because they're a team that is not known for possession. And they're a team that has known more for it being kind of a defensive style kind of team. Although now with their new interim manager, they kind of want to play kind of a possession game, which unfortunately it did not work whatsoever in this game. And for Colorado, this is definitely an impressive run that they've been on. And as I mentioned of the fact that they're 7 back off the red line, yeah, maybe there is definitely hope for Colorado to actually make the playoffs this season. And call me crazy or not, but 7 points is actually not that far out of the playoff line. I mean, if they can continue what they're doing right now, I mean, it does get a little bit tougher for Colorado in these next 4 games. I believe they play Minnesota next, and then they have to play Portland, LAFC, and Vancouver next. I think the LAFC and Portland, or that LAFC game is going to be at home, and that Portland game, I believe, is going to be on the road, and that Vancouver game is also going to be on the road. So it's definitely not going to get easier for the Rapids. And I know people will say that, well, the Rapids have been kind of gone through a bit of an easy run with them getting back-to-back win against the Ohio team that, right now both Ohio team is just struggling in the league. But still, they they did what they had to do to get those points, and it will be very interesting to see heading into these next couple of games. And really, just after this Gold Cup break, can they continue the run that they are on to potentially push themselves into the playoff spot? But moving on into the next game is Houston. So the Dynamo dropped points at home as they dropped points against Sporting KC with a 1-1 draw. And in the first half, there was no score. But in the second half, Crosse scored from Ilie to give SKC a 1-0 lead in that game. But then Albert Valise get the equalizer for Houston from De La Garza and Figueroa. But unfortunately, it was not enough for Houston to get all 3 points. And, Houston, they had a lot of chances in this game to potentially get a goal early or even get another goal to win this game after they went down 1-0. But they just could not find it in this one. And what's frustrating about this game for Houston is that they had Albert Valise in this game, and although Elise did score in this game and did contribute on the attacking end, you would think that with Elise on this team, they would definitely do much better than when Elise is not on this team, and that every time when Elise is on this team, they tends to always get the win, and especially at home where they have been so lethal this season, it is very rare to see a Houston team not been able to get all 3 points against their opponent, and especially against an SKC team that is still not 100% healthy. Now, in terms of the shots in this game, Houston had 15 shots compared to 5 that SKC had. 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that SKC had. 5 shots off target compared to 4 that SKC had. 5 shots that was blocked compared to none that SKC had. Possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession. So, for SKC, it wasn't a pretty game for them. It was kind of a performance where they hope that maybe they can just get out of Houston with a point, and consider how hard it is to get points out of Houston if you're a road team. I think they'll definitely be very happy with this result, but if you're Houston, this will definitely be a very disappointing result, and hopefully this is not this resort and the previous resort is not a sign that Houston is started to show their vulnerability. I mean, after they got off to such a hot start to the start of the season, in these last couple of games, they have definitely been exposed a little bit, and that they're not careful, they can definitely find themselves tumbling down the Western Conference. I mean, the Western Conference right now is so competitive. It doesn't take much for you to have maybe a bad game or a bad run for a couple of games before you will find yourself down near the bottom of the Western Conference, because a lot of these Western Conference teams just keep on winning and keep on getting the points that they need so that they can make a push to get above that playoff line. But moving on into the next match, and speaking of Houston, their rival FC Dallas got a 2-1 win against the Seattle Sounders, and the story of this game was own goals. And there was 2 of them. And it's not every day that you will see 2 own goal. And it's definitely not every day you see 2 own goal in a span of just 5 minutes. And by the way, before the start of this game, there was a very long rain delay to start this game. I think almost a 90-minute rain delay. And that they only got this game started right about 8:47 Central Time and 8:47 local time. But when they got things going, Dallas was able to get on the ball first, and like I mentioned, with the fact that this was really the game of own goals, FC Dallas' first goal was indeed an own goal. It was Orega scoring the own goal, and this was kind of a bit unfortunate because when Barrios basically hit that one in, it basically kind of hits off Orega, and then he basically deflected into the net. Stefan Fry pretty much had no chance there, as he was already drifting one way and that he couldn't quite readjust, so that deflection off of Orega would just be saved from going into the net. But yeah, FC Dallas, they got a 1-0 lead in that game, and would you believe 5 minutes later, they would double that lead by another own goal. Now, this time, it was a combination of poor defending by the Seattle Sounders and also just a miscommunication by the Seattle Sounders. This was a set piece where it was actually originally the Sounders defender thought that this set piece was going to be coming into the box, but instead FC Dallas, they kind of play it short in the wide area, and when that ball was crossed in, that low cross coming into the box wasn't really target anywhere near an FC Dallas attacker, and that it looked like Stephen Fry was going to get to that ball first, but apparently Brad Smith decided that he wants to kind of intervene that ball first and he want to clear it out, and unfortunately he basically redirected into his own net. I mean, I feel like if Smith did not intervene with that one, Stephen Fry would have easily got to that one, because that low cross was pretty much target to no FC Dallas in the box. Like, there was FC Dallas player in the box, but that cross and that ball coming into the box was nowhere near an FC Dallas player. So, yeah, that one, the first own goal was unfortunate. The second own goal, however, I think it would have been preventable if it wasn't for poor defending on the set piece and getting fooled by the short set piece, and the fact that there was some miscommunication between Brad Smith and Stephen Fry, and that Smith should have let that ball go so that Stephen Fry would have just easily caught that one, and there was no way that would have been a goal for FC Dallas, and that Dallas would be up 2-0 in this game. But in the second half, Seattle did respond. Ruidíaz scores from Bruin and Rodon, but unfortunately that is as close as they got, as they unfortunately could not find a way to get that second goal. And Dallas, they end their 6-game winless run by winning 2-1 in this one. And although you could say that they kind of got lucky in this one, considering the fact that it was really Seattle actually scoring 3 goals in this game. And I don't think there is a lot of time where a team score 3 goals in a game and that they would end up losing 2-1. And that a team would score 2 own goals in a game, and that, yeah, unfortunately they end up losing that one. But that was the case in this one, and that, if you're a Sounders fan, that has to be very frustrated, the fact that, you contribute to Dallas goal scoring. I mean, like I said, I think besides the first goal that they concede, that Smith goal, that one will be the one that Seattle fan will be really annoyed, because it looked very preventable if they had a better understanding that ball was actually just going to be a short set piece, and the fact that if there's a better communication there in the box. But in terms of the shots in this game, Dallas had 14 shots compared to 5 that Seattle has, 1 shot on goal compared to 2 that Seattle has, 9 shots off target compared to none that Seattle has, 6 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that Seattle has, and Seattle has 52% possession compared to 48% possession that Dallas had. So, for Dallas, it's a good win for them, a win that certainly is going to kind of help them a little bit. I mean, they still are missing so many players, either through injury or currently with the U20 World Cup team. And as for Seattle, yeah, this is definitely a game that, as I said in the preview, this is a game that they got to take advantage of it, because knowing that heading into that midweek game against Montreal, and that they have to travel on the road on short rest, and also they're potentially going to miss a lot of key players, because some of those key players are either going to go to the qualifier or they're going to be getting ready for the Gold Cup. They cannot afford to drop points in these games, and that they will know that those are the games that they potentially will drop points. But now they drop points in this game and also drop points in the game against SKC. Yeah, Seattle is started to slowly slip out of all down the Western Conference table, and for a team that were looking to challenge LAFC for the top spot, and were really kind of maybe the closest team to challenge LAFC in terms of getting that top spot, things are definitely not looking good for them to potentially do that. Speaking of LAFC, they sent a message in this game of the week by winning 3-2 against the Portland Timbers. And, this, of course, was the game of the week, and this was the marquee matchup of this week. And boy, did it not disappoint whatsoever. And that, in some way, this game had pretty much everything except a red card and a penalty in this game. In the first half, Vela scores to give LAFC a 1-0 lead and now has 16 goals for this season. But in many ways, this was a shocking goalkeeping howler by Jeff Antonella. I mean, Antonella basically, as he was trying to pass the ball on the goal kick, he literally passed it straight into the pass of Carlos Vela, and Carlos Vela basically just said, "Thank you very much, I'm just gonna take this one," and just slots it home to get my 16th goal of the season. I mean, that is probably the easiest goal that Carlos Vela has scored, probably as easy as the one that he scored when he was playing against the Quakes, where he was able to take it away from Vega, and then he basically just kind of tapped it in from about 40 yards out. Well, he made like a 40 yards run before kind of tapped it in. Besides that, this is probably the easiest goal that he will ever score. And then Rossi scores to give LAFC a 2-0 lead from Blackman and Vela. And again, poor defensive mistake by Portland. I mean, the defending from Portland in this game was very, very poor, and especially in the first half, where they just cannot stop these LAFC attacker. And LAFC, while they were up 2-0 at halftime, they could have easily had more in this game. I mean, Christian Ramirez missed a couple of absolute sitters that could have easily just put this game to bed, and that Portland would have been dead and buried in this game. And because of the fact that Portland was only down by 2-0, they might think that they still might have a little bit hope that they can, of course, get a goal back, and especially knowing that they have the home fans in their backing, that they might be able to come back from a 2-0 deficit. And obviously that home crowd, it was incredibly loud. The announcer on ESPN even said that it was very loud. I think it was John Champion even said that, man, it feels like or actually it wasn't John Champion, but Taylor Twellman even said that, man, it felt like the last time that I visit Providence Park, I don't think the crowd was even that loud. And the reason why I think Providence Park has definitely got a little bit louder is because, well, they have the 4,000 extra seats in that stadium, and also that new stands is, the way that they designed that new stands is able to reflect noise back down to the field. So obviously that's why it got a lot louder. And it also shows how impressive this victory is for LAFC, considering in a hostile environment they are still able to get all 3 points in this game. Now, in the second half, Paredes got Portland on the board and scored the first goal in the newly renovated Providence Park. And, at that point, there was definitely hope that they could potentially get that second goal and get that equalizer goal. And they almost did, because literally a couple of minutes later, Brian Fernandez was one-on-one with Tyler Miller. And, usually when you see Brian Fernandez one-on-one with the keeper, you would definitely fancy Fernandez able to put one away, especially what he has done in these first couple of games as a member of the Portland Timber. But Tyler Miller, of course, made a big save during that time. And I think out of all the headlines in this game, I think the one that might get buried a little bit is that Tyler Miller makes some really big save in this game. Like, Portland, they were really pushing to try to get a goal back and trying to get a goal before this, but every time Tyler Miller, of course, denies them. And even in this goal before in this goal that Paredes scored and before Portland got one back, Tyler Miller made a couple of decent saves that unfortunately it bounced right into Paredes, and Paredes basically slots it home. But yeah, at that point it was 2-1, and Fernandez almost made it 2-2. And then LAFC got that crucial third goal from Latif Blessing to go up 3-1 in that game. And I feel like this goal was a real momentum killer, because Portland, they were really pushing, and the crowd was definitely on their feet and was really pushing them to try to get the equalizer, and that we already saw how close they came a couple of minutes ago. But this goal by Blessing, not only it was a crowd silencers, but it also just kind of killed a little bit of momentum for the Timbers, and that the Timbers was just feeling distraught again because now they're once again find themselves down 2 goals in the game. And then just like the game between DC versus the Quakes, where right about the hour mark and after the hour mark, things really started to get very tense. And that was once again the case in this one, where the game once again started to get very heated, and the ref really started to lose control of the game, and that, guys was just kind of embellishing a lot. Guys was just getting in each other's face. Although compared to that DC versus Quakes games to this one, I think this one was even more heated, considering the fact that there was a lot on the line in this game and that this was a marquee matchup. And this game, not only the players were getting at each other's faces, but also the benches and the coaching staff was also getting involved in. I mean, one of the LAFC assistant coach actually came on the pitch and got out of his technical area to get involved with one of the action, and I have a feeling that that assistant coach is going to get a fine from Disco on Wednesday that, yeah, you basically just violated the league policy of entering the field of play and exiting your technical area. So I won't be surprised on Wednesday when I do the news of the week that that assistant coach is going to be on the numerous list of players that is going to get fined by Disco. And there's no doubt that when you look at what happened at the end of what happened in these last 20 minutes and what happened in stoppage time, when there was an instant in stoppage time where Diamande literally shoved one of the Timbers player, and then I think it was Fernandez kind of grabbed into the neck of Diamande. I have a feeling Diamande and Fernandez both are going to get a fine. Diamande probably going to get a fine for violent conduct, and Fernandez probably going to get a fine for hands to the face, because anytime when you touch an opponent's neck, and even though you're just kind of trying to comfort them and trying to calm them down, you can't do that because it's a violation to the league policy of hands to the face. But, before we... And I actually kind of jump a little bit in terms of talk about that stoppage time incident. But before that stoppage time incident, Brian Fernandez scores from Abobasi and Villafania to give Portland some hope. But unfortunately, that is as close as they came. And like I said, during that stoppage time, just like that DC versus San Jose game where the stoppage time, 90% of the stoppage time was just players kind of diving and time wasting, and there was just each other getting into each other's faces. It was the same case in this one, and then during this one there was even a VAR incident just to see that instant between Diamande and a couple of Timbers player of whether or not if there is some sending off issue in that instant. But overall, in terms of the shots in this game, 19 shots compared to 16 that LAFC had, 7 shots on goal compared to 5 that LAFC had, 5 shots on target compared to 6 that LAFC had, 7 shots that was blocked compared to 5 that LAFC had. Possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession. And as I mentioned before, this was definitely a statement win for LAFC, and that, they are not phased with the fact that they're heading into a hostile environment and that they are heading into a big party that Portland is hosting in terms of their new stadium opening, and basically they decided to act as party pooper and get all 3 points away from Portland. Like, not many teams would be able to walk into Portland, and especially in this kind of occasion and in this hostile of an environment, and able to walk out of it with all 3 points. That just shows you how LAFC is just... They're literally a team that is beyond anybody else, and not only they're like in the top tier of MLS right now, but I don't think there is really anyone close right now to the level that LAFC is playing right now. Not only they can win at home, but they can also win on the road, and they can also win in a hostile environment like this one when they're playing on the road against the Portland Timbers. But moving on into the next one, and I know I kind of spent a lot of time talking about this game because there was a lot of crazy things that happened in this game. And it's the same with the next game that I'm going to be talking about. Not only it has the same scoreline as the Portland versus LAFC game between Minnesota and the Union. And by the way, the Union was able to walk out with 3 points and become the first team to ever get all 3 points at Allianz Field and hand Minnesota their first loss at Allianz Field. But this game was also pretty insane. And I think this game pretty much had some of the similar action to this one, except unlike this one where things got really heated, this one, it wasn't really much, it wasn't really kind of heated. And in some ways, if you're a football fan that kind of like just intense, kind of fast-paced kind of game, but you don't want those kind of ugly kind of incident where player was getting into each other's faces and just there's some ugly kind of sliding challenge, this one might be the game for you, because it wasn't really heated. It was more of kind of like a fair kind of back and forth kind of game. And that was the case in the first 30 minutes, where it was crazy of how end to end it was for the first 30 minutes. I mean, it felt like I was watching a hockey game, with the way that every time when one team attacked, the other team will immediately counterattack, and then when that counterattack failed, then the other team would counterattack, and it was just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And in some way, during that time, I thought Minnesota had a lot of chances of potentially getting the first goal. And this has been the problem for Minnesota for these last couple of games, where they have so many shots in games, but yet just because they had so many shots a game, and just because they're able to get into a good area to potentially score a goal, they just cannot score those goals. And right now, their best attacker, Quintero, Rodriguez, and Ibarra, they just cannot buy a goal right now. Like, every time when I saw in this game where it's either Ibarra, Rodriguez, or even Quintero get into a good spot, it just feels like they either took too much touches or hesitate to shoot the ball, or they just get into a good area but they just hits it straight to the goalkeeper, or just hits it wide. And this also shows you that right now you can tell that those three strikers that is supposed to be the main source of this Minnesota attack is just stone cold right now. And when you have guys that is stone cold, it is very hard to try to get out of that slump. But like I said, things was very crazy in the first 30 minutes. And then Montero, of course, scores the penalty. And this was right after just a couple of seconds ago, where on the other end, Rodriguez looked like he was going to get the first goal for Minnesota, only for Philly immediately counterattack and win a penalty on the other end. And Montero, of course, puts it away. Then Dotson scores to make it to make it 1-1 in this game. And I wrote goal of the week with a question mark, and I probably should erase this one, because as I'm going to be talking about the next game, the next game, there was definitely a goal that probably without a question of doubt that is going to be the goal of the week this week. But yeah, this was definitely a nice little strike. I think he hit it off the volley, and it was about 30 yards out, and it was just able to find that left side of the post. It actually came off the post and goes into the back of the net to tie the game up. But then right before the halftime whistle, Medunian scores to give Philly the lead again to make it 2-1 at halftime. And for Minnesota, as much as they had so many chances to score in the first half, that has to be very infuriating to give up a goal right before halftime. Like, even after they got that equalizer, they had chances of taking the lead for the first time in that game. And then in the second half, the Union started to kind of sit deep and look to just kind of ride it out, which I don't think that is a great idea, because I know a lot of Union fans, they see this as a very typical Jim Curran kind of tactics, where they decide to bring one of the attacker out, and in this case, they actually decided to bring Sergio Santos off and just hope that they can maybe ride it out. And in some way, I kind of understand why Jim Curran decided to do this, because he already saw what Minnesota is doing, where they, every time when Minnesota had a good chance to score, they just aren't able to put it into the back of the net. And that even though there is a shooting gallery that Minnesota is putting in front of the Philly goal, none of the ball except for one that actually went into the back of the net. So I understand why he decided to maybe sit deep and try to absorb pressure, but I just have a feeling that when you decide to do that, and especially against a team that is just putting a shooting gallery in your net, it's not gonna go very well, isn't it? And eventually that would prove costly for Jim Curtin to decide to sit back, because in the 77th minute, Minnesota equalized, and after they put on a shooting gallery and put on so many shots in front of the Philly goal, they finally found one that ended up into the back of the net when Kevin Molino scores from Denladi and Mentinere to tie the game up at 2-2. And I thought, now with Minnesota scoring that goal, yeah, maybe that will give Minnesota the momentum again, and maybe give them a chance to get that crucial third goal to lead the game again. But it seemed like in this game, every time when Minnesota looked like they got that equalizer and looked like they were potentially going to get the lead again, Philly able to strike back. And it was once again the case with 4 minutes left in the game. Austin Trusty scores from Ezinho to get the crucial third goal for Philly. And yeah, that has to be absolutely heartbreak for Minnesota. I mean, they were really pushing man forward, and I guess when you decide to push man forward so much, and when you're trying to push everybody going forward, you're gonna definitely leave some gaps from behind. And I think after when Philly conceded that goal, they kind of immediately just gone back to what they've been doing throughout the game, which is trying to exploit Minnesota every time on the counter attack when Minnesota kind of push too many men forward, and that is exactly what happened in this instant, and that Trusty was able to score this goal from Ezinho to give them the 3-2 win. And yeah, that of course is the final score of this game. As the shots in this game, oh yeah, there is plenty of shots in this game. 29 shots compared to 14 that Philly has. 6 shots on goal compared to 5 that Philly has. 8 shots off target compared to 7 that Philly had. 15 shots that was blocked compared to 7 that Philly has. And Philly had 47% possession compared to 53% Minnesota has. And, you know, this has been just this just sums up what Minnesota has been in the last couple of weeks. And although, you know, in this game they were able to find score more than the one goal every time they just put on a shooting gallery, they still cannot score more than like when you see 29 shots in a game, you usually think that team should at least got maybe 2 or 3 or at least win the game. But that was not the case in this game. And, you know, in some way, I think maybe Minnesota kind of pushed too many men forward way too many times in this game. And that's why Philly was able to kind of capitalize. Because Philly, they were going to try to, number one, press, but also trying to catch Minnesota every time on the counterattack. And boy, was it successful in this game. And the other thing that I also say before we move on into the next one is that I said that in the preview, this was a game where I expect there's going to be a tons of shots, but there isn't going to be a lot of goals because both of these teams cannot finish. Well, in some case, it was kind of true, the fact that there was many shots. There was a lot of shots in this game, and that most of those shots either of teams wasn't able to convert. But at the same time, Philly at the end of the day was just a more clinical side. And I also think that, you know, with that many shots in this game, I think the team that is just the more clinical one will eventually win it, when you have both teams that struggle to put the ball into the back of the net despite how many chances that they have created. And in this case, it was Philly that was able to do that. But finally, heading into the final game of this weekend, and I'm going to try to make it as short as possible because I've been spending a lot of time talking about some of these games, and mainly these last 2 games, because of the fact that these were very exciting games, and I think it's worth it to spend more than 10 minutes to talking about this game. But the last game that I'm going to be talking about is the Revs taking on the Galaxy, the game that of course just finished about 40 minutes ago. And in the end, it was the Revs getting their first away victory against the Galaxy as they won 2-1 against them. And it's only fitting that they got their first away victory when Bruce Arena took charge of their team for the first time, and that he beat against his whole team. And after all that report of the fact that whether or not if Bruce Arena was going to take charge of this Revs team, because if he is going to take charge of it, he has to face against the teams that he's been with for a long time, and that is the team that really kind of made him an MLS coaching legend. And in this game, he was able to face against his old team and able to walk out of Dignity Health Sports Park with a 2-1 victory. Now, I don't know if a lot of that has to do with the fact that, he, of course, since he's been a long time head coach with the Galaxy, he knows exactly what the Galaxy done. Because as I said in the preview, it's been almost 5 years since Bruce Arena has been in charge of the Galaxy. Well, actually 4 years now, because he resigned as the Galaxy head coach back in 2015. And that most of this team is definitely different, and the tactics that the Galaxy use is much different than when Bruce Arena was taking in charge of it. But it almost felt like he knew exactly what they did, and he absolutely nullified that Galaxy defense and also that attack. Now, having said that, I think it's also partially due to the fact that the Galaxy basically decided to not show up in this game. And in the 9th minute, Leggett actually went down with an injury, and this guy just cannot catch a break right now. I mean, Sebastian Leggett, I swear, he must be one of the most injury-prone player in MLS right now. Every time it seemed like he's on the field after he comes back in injury, you know that he eventually will suffer an injury a couple of weeks later, because he has just been so injury prone. And to think a guy that during his early career can consider a future U.S. men's national team star, and with all these injury that has bothered him, I think that is the reason why I don't think his chances of breaking into the U.S. men's national team and just to fulfill his potential that he has when he was first coming into the league, yeah, it's probably not going to happen with just the numerous injury that he has to suffer the numerous injury that he has suffered throughout his career. And unfortunately, he suffered another injury in this instant, and he actually came off in this game. And I think that took a huge dent into that Galaxy attack, because this Galaxy attack, they really didn't do much. And in some way, you also got to credit the Revs defense too. I mean, the Revs defense, not only they shut down the Galaxy attack, but they also shut down Zlatan, and they look very dangerous going forward. Like, they absolutely troubled the Galaxy defense multiple times, and eventually they got their reward when Pineda scores from Carlos Hill to give them a 1-0 lead. But in many ways, they probably could have been 2 or 3-0 up if they were a little bit more clinical. And then in the second half, same story. The Revs, they continue to look like the better team, and they continue to trouble that Galaxy attack. And that Galaxy attack and defense was just way too slow. It feels like they were always second to the ball every time, whether if the Revs are going on the attack or just when the Galaxy was trying to win a 50-50 ball, they always are second to try to get that ball. And then at the hour mark, Bunbury scores from Carlos Hill. That's actually Bunbury's first goal in over a year. And I guess this kind of made up for what happened earlier in the game, where he had a absolute wide open shot and just an empty net to shoot from 5 yards out, and he absolutely blasted into the stands. I mean, that is an absolute sitter that Bunbury missed. And I know Theo Bunbury, he has definitely not looked good for the Revs in this season and also in last season. But come on, can you how in the world can you not bury a 5-yard kind of sitter, and that the goalkeeper was literally nowhere near to try to save that, and that if he just tapped that one in, that would have been easily a goal for him, and that New England should have been 1-0 up in that moment, not until the 45th minute. But the good thing is he did redeem himself when he scored at the hour mark from Carlos Hill. Then Zlatan did scores from Corona and Ponez, and this is probably going to be the goal of the week. And you know how I said about where I said I put question mark on goal of the week, and I probably should have erased it. Yeah, this is the reason why, because this was a bicycle kick from Zlatan, and that most likely he's going to win the goal of the week for that. And really, that was kind of the only good moment that the Galaxy had on the attack. Well, actually, besides maybe right when the final whistle was about to blow, where there was a bit of a scramble in the box, and that the Galaxy had three to four chances of potentially scoring the equalizer in stoppage time and even hitting the post in one of their shot. That was really it in terms of the Galaxy attack. Like, they were really toothless going forward, and there was really nothing that they can offer. And that Zlatan was pretty much kept relatively quiet, except for until the 84th minute, where he basically did his classic thing and did a classic Zlatan kind of moment. But otherwise, New England, certainly they deserve all 3 points in this game and able to win 2-1 against the Galaxy. And in terms of the shots in this game, 16 to 14 in favor of New England, 7 shots on goal compared to 2 in favor of New England. Both team had 7 shots off target, and both team had 5 shots that was blocked. And possession-wise, 62% possession compared to 38% possession. So, yeah, for New England, they continue on this very good run that they've been having. I mean, ever since they fired Brad Friedel, New England have definitely looked like a very respectable team, which I don't think that really surprised a lot of New England fans. They knew that Brad Friedel was a big problem to this team, and that once they have a new interim head coach in Mike Lapper, and now with Bruce Arena taking in charge, yeah, this New England team has started to no longer look like the laughing stock in the league. And if they can continue the way that they're playing right now, they might be able to find themselves climb all the way up above the red line. And especially of how crazy the Eastern Conference is, I definitely would not rule out the fact that New England could make the playoffs this season. But as for the Galaxy, yeah, this was a poor performance by them. And as I said, they clearly did not show up in this game, and they probably caught up in the moment where, you know, they can't believe Bruce Arena is coaching the other team and not really coaching their team right now, and that's why, well, I wouldn't say that's why they lost this game, but they just simply didn't show up in this one. But that being said, that is pretty much it for all the games that I have reviewed, and I can probably take a huge sigh of relief and take a huge breath of fresh air now because of how long this video has been. And by the way, the room tonight, I don't know why, but it's actually very hot right now. And even though I am wearing a short sleeve kind of LAFC jersey, I'm still kind of sweating right now because of the way how hot the room is. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.